Good morning. I have the pleasure of introducing my friend Peter Schorsch. I first met Peter back in 2008 when he was knocking on doors of Tallahassee public relations and communications firm, pitching an idea of an online media platform for all things policy and politics. I was intrigued. Many existing outlets were just beginning to navigate their online presence. And here is Peter jumping straight into the arena, providing news as it happens with an insider's look that print newspapers could not provide. It was called St. Peter's Blog and quickly gained a loyal following, myself included. From St. Peter's Blog to what is now known as floridapolitics.com, it is a statewide new media platform covering campaigns, elections, government, politics, and lobbying in Florida. Sunburn, the morning read of what's happening in Florida politics, delivered Monday through Friday by 4 a.m. Last Call is an evening recap at the end of the workday. But on Saturdays, we have takeaways from Tallahassee, and not to be missed on Sunday is the weekly winner and losers of the week. Interested in what's happening in Northeast Florida, there's Jacksonville Bold. Following the healthcare issue, we have Diagnosis. And covering the DC federal scene before all Floridians moved to Washington, DC, we have The Delegation. And when publications were shutting down, he jumped into the fray, starting a magazine he modeled after John F. Kennedy Jr.'s magazine, George, with Influence magazine. With more than a dozen journalists spread across the state and soon in the nation's capital, Peter and his team routinely get the scoop and are the first with breaking news in the state's third largest state. For several years, Peter's blog was ranked by the Washington Post as the best state-based blog in Florida and is the go-to source for all things Florida politics. He's now moved into other states in the region with southeastpolitics.com. He enjoys his martinis dirty, his restaurants Michelin rated. He often quotes TV series Mad Men and the lyrics of Taylor Swift. He is a devoted husband and father to wife Michelle and now teenage daughter Ella Joyce. Please join me in welcoming Peter Schorsch.
For those of you who saw me a couple months ago, I was recovering from one hip surgery and going for a second one, and both were successful, and so now back on the tennis courts to 2 hours yesterday, and so I feel very good about that. So a little hobble there. Jesus, really have to follow Grady Judd? I mean, wow. I mean, he was just... That was all bangers. I mean, that was just one after another. And it is kind of interesting. I always think about just what a great job it must be to be a Florida sheriff. What an empire you've gotten away. And we are blessed, truly, with a lot of great sheriffs in the state. Like in my neck of the woods, I think Bob Gualtieri is probably the most fair man I've ever met. Grady Judd is fantastic. Chris Noko's fantastic. There's just one good sheriff after another, and it does contribute to the great state of Florida. And so I know that a lot of you, I will be honest, I appreciate the interest in my speech and what you wanted to hear from me, and a lot of you have been asking about my opinions on this, and so let me start with Taylor Swift, Life of the Showgirl. So the first and last songs are kind of operatic presentations on who she is as an artist, as a cultural icon. Rest of the album really is bangers. I love Canceled. I love Honey. It's kind of what music is supposed to be, like a 3 or 4 minute song that you put on right before you go into work and you feel jazzed all day. There's another song called Wood. I would not play that to your young child. It has something to do with Travis Kelce, supposedly, but we'll just leave that for another day. Actually, I did want to talk about Taylor Swift because I think she's an interesting contrast to what I've been asked to talk about. And she's the last vestige, I think, maybe the last example of the monoculture. And that's the idea that there are items in popular culture that we all experience at the same time. And she does have the #1 album. She has the #1 movie, the #1 song. She was on the #1 talk show last night. She's everywhere, as all of our children can tell you. In fact, I found it interesting. She was on Fallon last night, and she was talking about how a song that she did, Father Figure, which was a famous George Michael song, she actually was inspired by Succession. And so there are edits on TikTok and Instagram where they lay over the lyrics and scenes from Succession. And so I'm like, that is just so incredible that this artist is connecting 30-something years of pop culture. I've been trying to explain to Ella Joyce, who did. She turned 13 on Sunday, and it really, I know you all that have children, it breaks your heart when you see them. It was her last Bippity Bop Boutique appointment on a Disney cruise, and it really did. It made me and Michelle both cry, and she's straddling the world between remaining a child and going into whatever the hell is going on at middle school and all of that. We tried to explain to her an equivalent to Taylor Swift. And you think there were some rap artists that stream more, have bigger songs, bigger albums, Eminem, Kendrick Lamar, et cetera. But they could not sell out a global tour and make $1 billion from that. There was Mariah and Whitney. Mariah, that Christmas song is still on every year. It's still, I think it's the most streamed song now of all time or something like that. And Whitney just didn't have the albums. Poor Bobby Brown ruined her. Some big bands. I think it's not my favorite, despite my Irish ancestry, but I think U2 had a moment where it was biggest band in the world with the Apple commercials and its tour. But I went back to it and I thought, it may be Michael Jackson, who was, Thriller was so big, and he was such a global phenomenon. But I actually think it may have been Elvis. And I remember going to Graceland and seeing the exhibitions there. And I don't know if you know it, but there is an RV park at Graceland, which is a hell of a good time. Just pull in your RV right there. You get to walk over to Graceland. We went there during the pandemic. They've got a barbecue joint that pulls up in an old pink Cadillac to deliver the food. A great time. But Elvis had like the #1 show, the #1 movie, the #1 songs, #1 album all at the same time. And so I think that that's kind of an equivalent here. And so now that I've dragged you through my Swiftie dad obsession, and I do wear a Travis Kelce jersey on multiple occasions, I'd like to bring you to the opposite of that monoculture, which is the current and sad state of Florida's media landscape. First, though, we need to kind of distinguish between news and political news. And Grady Judd kind of lined that up for me. He's in the news industry. And his sphere, his silo, is still very active. People, it's an old adage of journalism that if something bleeds, it leads. And so that is why he gets 35 million views, because we are still entranced by that. I do want to also say, I think we have, and Grady kind of showed the examples of this, we do have a pretty solid, straight news industry in Florida. The broadcast news television stations are some of the biggest revenue generators for their companies like Nexstar, et cetera. And the ratings reflect that. They get strong ratings in their community. Tampa Bay, I think is the 11th biggest media market. We have 4 local TV news stations. And we also have, and I think this is a credit to the Florida news industry, remember, we're one of the few areas, states, media markets that have 2 dedicated 24-hour news channels. I mean, you see this in New York, but Bay News 9 and CF13, that's a rarity. You don't even see that in Los Angeles. We've got other great broadcast stations like CBS Miami, et cetera. Like, I think if you're following that, I think that they're very good. But I think for the people in this room, when we talk about, or what I would like to talk to is basically the political news. And that is, unfortunately, the quickest way I could say it is, the news we are getting there is the news that we pay for, one way or the other. That we are, in the political news area, we are now down to Florida Politics, Politico, the News Service of Florida, which are all basically subscriber-based. You have other outlets up in the community, or excuse me, in the Capitol. You know, you still have a presence by what is, you know, the Gannett newspapers. They have a kind of a loose tag of statewide newspapers, but with the amount of stories that come out of Tallahassee every day, you know, imagine if you're the one reporter for the Palm Beach Post or the one reporter, if you're Jeff Schwiers for the Orlando Sentinel. You cover DeSantis' press conference. You maybe get to Ootmeyer's press conference, and then you've got to try and figure out how do you get to the other 25 stories that have come out of the fire hose that day. And it's impossible. And so the only news that the average newspaper reading is getting is that one big ticket item from DeSantis. You know, tourism is up, or we're going to enforce a book ban, or we're going to sue this, or whatever. You're not getting anything about the legislative process. You're really not getting anything about the campaign process, the candidates anymore. You're not getting any of the policy news on healthcare, on education. The only way you're getting that is if you pay or you subscribe to these outlets. You all are well versed in political news, but I'm sad to say, you know, that the rest of the state is not. And that's why one of the decisions that I made early on was I don't put a paywall on Florida politics. And in fact, one of the things that we do, we spend money promoting our posts in I think there's something like 25 news deserts in Florida, which is a community of, I think, 40,000 people without a daily newspaper. Like, if you look through a map of the news deserts, there's so many, you know, relatively large communities that just don't even have a daily newspaper, or they have basically a Gannett newspaper. But, you know, we're not talking about Jacksonville and Tampa or anything like that, but we are talking about those mid-major cities, Coral Springs or something like that, where they just don't even have access to a daily newspaper. All right, so I want to, I do want to say, I want to start off and say something that is kind of in 2023 or 2024, the News Service of Florida put out a list of the most powerful people in Florida politics. And they included elected officials. I do a similar list. I don't do that. But they did a basic list. And so obviously Ron DeSantis is number one. And the Speaker of the House is going to be number two, et cetera. But by the middle of the list, you got past the elected officials and the agency heads. And inexplicably, I was ranked 49th on this list, which made me the highest ranking member of the media on the list, higher than the publisher of the Tampa Bay Times or the beautiful broadcasters on the television news stations. And I have to tell you, that is 100% embarrassing. Not embarrassing for me. I was glad. I blew that thing up. I've got that everything. I've got wallpaper of that in my house. 49 is my favorite number now. I was one ahead of Eric Eichenberg, and I'm like, wow, a former chief of staff and in charge of a huge foundation. I'm like, I sent him a little note about that. That's just embarrassing for the entire state of the industry, that the guy who was in his mom's house in his robe 12, 13 years ago is supposedly more powerful than the publisher of the Tampa Bay Times, which has been around for over 110 years now, or the editor of the Miami Herald. And it's not because I'm wrong or that I'm doing anything wrong, although I do things wrong all the time. It's that they have just abdicated that space. And I don't understand why that is. I don't understand why in this era, like, the most important statistic that I think that I've ever read, and as far as my industry goes, is that interest in the news on 9/12/01 tripled, and it has never abated. Now, you will see things like the Trump effect, where 2016 to 2020, there was a huge boom in conservative and right-leaning journalist sites. Then that died off a little bit during the Biden administration, and now it's back up where, There's more interest again because Trump is ubiquitous in the news. But still, the hunger for news and information has not abated. The fact that I'm 49, and there were other people in the new media on this list, it should be embarrassing to Michael Van Sickler, who's the Metro editor, just calling him out by name, of the Tampa Bay Times, because he was a reporter. We both started off at the same time. It should be embarrassing to, where are the other reporters? I know this was closed, or this is private, but I'm sure that if, pick anybody, Glenna Milberg, great reporter, she's been on my Influence 150 list. If she asked Dominic, hey, can I come for the Grady Judd speech? I'm sure there would have been an accommodation made. Or go look, I know this same crowd will probably be at the Florida Chamber of Commerce Future of Florida Forum in 3 weeks. Look around that day and ask, where are the reporters for that? When AIF has its conference, and ask, where are the reporters for that? When the Florida GOP and the Florida Democratic Party have their annual events, where are those reporters? Not because, I mean, I don't think Grady Judd broke any news there, but the sidelines, that's Bill Carlson right there. My old friend Bill Carlson, he's a Tampa City councilman. He's always making news in our community. He's gonna run for mayor of Tampa. Why wouldn't you talk to Bill Carlson, one of the smartest men that I know, about whatever is going on in Tampa right now and get yourself 30 minutes with him on the sidelines and get a story? And I know each one of you all in here would be, are worthy of a story, of an interview, of a profile. And I don't see them out here. I just don't see them out here anymore. And so I think it's embarrassing for them. I think it's also embarrassing for the readers. And I think this is one of the most insulting aspects of media criticism right now, is that you see the statistics, and it's always, well, the readers are turning to TikTok and Instagram for their news, as if that as if that's damning that they're doing that. Well, there's no content on these sites when they go to them, already blocked behind a paywall, already loaded up like a dog's breakfast with ads all over the place. Go right now, look at any Gannett newspaper. Gannett is a demon in this state. You know, look at the Tallahassee Democrat, look at the Palm Beach Post, look at the Jacksonville Times-Union, look at any of those newspapers. See, first of all, if you can get on a story. See how many ads you have to click through to get to a story, just to get the news, and see what news is there. It'll be 7 reasons why you should invest in gold this week. So none of that is there, and so of course readers are turning to, hey, you know, there is somebody that is at least telling a little bit of a story on TikTok. Is it as authoritative as my good friend Jim Rossica writing a story in Tallahassee? No, you know, something was so embarrassing to me the other night. I literally was at the Taylor Swift release movie at the theater at 6 o'clock. There was a shooting on I-10 in Tallahassee on Miami, Florida state weekend. There was a random person shooting people off of the main entrance off of Thomasville Road and I-10. And I broke that story from a movie theater. I sent a note up to Jim Rossica and William Hatfield, the publishers of that. I'm like, you may want to warn the thousands of people that are coming to town right at this moment for the biggest football game of the year to avoid I-10 and Thomasville Road. And that's just one little thing. It's just the most recent thing that happened, and it's crazy to me. This week, Bari Weiss, this is the hot media story of the week, if not the month, if not the year. Bari Weiss was acquired by Paramount, which was recently acquired by the Ellison family and Skydance, which is the company that owns Oracle and made their money there. Bari Weiss was acquired for $150 million, or not Bari Weiss, but Bari Weiss's publication, The Free Press, was acquired, and she was made the head of CBS News, the so-called Tiffany Network. I mean, we're talking about Edward R. Murrow, we're talking about 60 Minutes, et cetera. First of all, when I see an independent journalist like Bari Weiss, who was just 4 years ago an opinion writer for the New York Times, when I see that she made $150 million, all I know is I'm gonna be frickin' rich one day. I am gonna bank. I don't know who it's gonna be. I don't know what hedge fund. Somebody get me Ken Griffin's number, because if Her site is only drawing in twice as much traffic as ours is, and she just got 150 million. And I know I can outright her. We got to be worth 30 or 40 somehow on paper. I'll take a deal right now for 25. If any of you want to put a number out there, float that for me. But I saw that. I'm just like, wow, 150 million for a site. Really, it gets 3.7 million viewers, I think, a month. I know the Florida politics is in that neighborhood. We may not be the biggest house on that neighborhood, but we're in that same neighborhood. In fact, if I could tell you one quick story, I found it interesting. We got a call from the owners of Politico and Business Insider and Axel Springer in Germany. They also own Der Spiegel. And they said to me, they're like, we have the #1 product in California, #1 product in New York, #1 product in New Jersey and Illinois. We are second in Florida. And it's because of you. And it was because Sunburn beats Playbook. And they said it in a way, I was just like, I'm sorry, did I do something wrong here? And so I think Jacob, just hang on. We're gonna be rich one day. We're sending Jacob Ogles, by the way, an intrepid reporter. He's everywhere all the time. He's broken so many stories. Perfect example of what my business model has been. Basically, I think the Tampa Bay Rays model, where we find, I think, undervalued gems. We polish them up. We connect them with you all. We connect them with our sources. And now he is now a Washingtonian. We're sending him up to D.C. We're going to have, I think, the only Washington branch of any Florida news outlet at this point. We're going to send we'll find a second person after that because of so much that's going on. So stay in touch with Jacob Ogles. All of this is to say the value of independent journalism, and not independent like center-right or center-left, although I'm very proud of Florida politics. According to Media Matters, or not Media Matters, Mediaite, was it? I don't remember what it was, but they do an annual ranking of where news outlets sit in terms of bias. Right, left, low information, high information. High information in the middle is the Associated Press. You're going to get clean, newsworthy copy. There are better high information or better quality sites, but they will have like a left-leaning bias, maybe like the Atlantic, or a right-leaning bias. There's low information, right and left. You can imagine that, like the Daily Caller and MSNBC kind of fall in that. We fell as the second closest to the middle axis in terms of bias, right or left. And I'm so proud of that, because in a state like Florida, where you can balance, I know that we're a red state in terms of elected officials, but we still are, in terms of, I think, demographics, we're still a centrist state. And so I've always been proud that we're able to maintain that level. And we were not as high information. I don't have a foreign bureau yet, but we were in that high value quadrant as well. I'm going to skip some of my aggrievements. Because I do want to get to I want to get to the political stuff, because I'm road testing something special for you all. I do want to make a few recommendations. One of the things that I do get feedback from people is like, hey, what should I be reading? What should I be following? And I don't think we do this enough as leaders, as corporate leaders, government affairs leaders, et cetera. Where are we getting our information? I feel like there's kind of a loop that we get into and we don't break out of that. I get asked what I read. Truth be told, I'm a very slow reader. It's the weirdest thing that I can't read fast. I can't read novels, but I can scan. And so I can scan, I can copy and paste. I'm definitely a reader of the 21st century as opposed to the 19th or 20th. And so, with Sunburn, I don't know, we probably look at 200 different outlets, throughout the day, looking at, there are nuggets everywhere. Like, I will tell you, one of the things, it's in my recommendation list, I think you should all sign up for the Step Up for Students education newsletter, John Kirtley's newsletter that they put out every day. First of all, there's so much going on in the education sphere. And I know a lot of you know that, and you may know it just at the surface level, like you're hearing it. But number one, the school voucher, for lack of a better term, dynamic is the biggest policy change in Florida, bar none, period, the end. There's a story today, 9 out of 10 schools in Orange County have less students in them, public schools, than they did a year ago. I'm not saying that that is right or wrong. In fact, I would make the argument as a school choice advocate that it's probably right. It's creating competition on the Orange County schools to provide a better product so as to reattract those students and families. But that is if any business had year over year 90% loss, it would be a front page story. Also, school board races are so extraordinarily interesting. Like, I think we covered 150 election results the last time around in November. I bet you we get to 225 because the school board races are now state legislative races where you were seeing, the candidates wouldn't even have enough money for a mailer to get out. And remember, they're running countywide, so to talk to all the people in Pinellas County is so expensive. Those races are now raising several $100,000. They have professional consultants on it. Those people that win are making massive, major decisions. And so the combination of the policy changes inside of Florida's education system and just the political excitement of school board races, I will say right now, anybody that wants to invest in a product with Florida politics, I want to do, just like we've done diagnosis, just like we've done Jacksonville, et cetera, I want an education silo. Somebody that just, all they will do is report on school board races, on education, because there's so much interest in that right now. So I do think you should sign up for that John Kirtley's newsletter. It's an aggregator that I think is very good. I will make a pitch for Florida politics in a way that, number one, there's a lot of long-form stuff on Florida politics, not Sunburn, Florida politics itself. That doesn't make it to Sunburn. We have Gabrielle Rousson. She was the former tourism reporter for the Orlando Sentinel. The Orlando Sentinel doesn't have a tourism reporter, which to me is insane. It's insane because from a business decision, how are you not writing about everyday Disney World? If any of you have traveled to Europe, the Tribune newspapers, which is owns the Orlando Sentinel, is still blocked in the European Union because of their privacy concerns. So German tourists who are coming here by the millions cannot go to the first thing that comes up to learn whether or not Disney World is open. Now, all I know is how to make $2 off of one. That's the one thing I can do. That is how you make money. That is how you pay for the other journalism in Orlando, is by having a good tourism reporter. So we hired Gabrielle Rousson away. Long story short, she writes incredible stuff. She was runner-up for Journalist of the Year on whatever the awards are that go out. She's just an incredible reporter, and a lot of her stuff just doesn't even make it in Sunburn because I try and keep Sunburn kind of political focused. But she's got tourism, economic development, et cetera. So there's a lot of stuff there. I also urge you, I know a lot of you, because I see it, and I'm talking to you, Natalie King, I see it, who take my texts and then pop them right out after they go out and look at this news that just broke. I would sign up for, it's join subtext /Florida politics. That is my text message service. I keep it to only 2,500 people. I do not, to get on it, there's a waiting list for it. It is my best scoops, and they are scoops ahead of where I put Twitter. It's stuff that I hear. It's not the news, but last week, when I heard subpoenas were flying on Hope, Florida, we were out there first with the stories that, hey, people are being subpoenaed. When Danny Perez and the crew were up at the White House and they wanted to back Kevin Steele, back Danny Perez, and double or triple down on Byron Donalds, that was coming out on the tech service first. So I urge you to sign up or get on the waiting list for the join subtext list. You're talking directly to me. I will say it's also where I talk with a lot of you. I ask for recommendations on up and down arrows. People, it's anonymous. It's how you can get in touch with me. It's awesome for me. I get so many scoops from you all saying, hey, did you just watch the subcommittee on criminal justice where somebody just said, all sorts of crazy stuff. You should not follow my Twitter feed, please. I do break a lot of news there, but it has become just a running commentary on Taylor Swift and Dave Matthews Band and F1 and tennis and food and drunken late night movie commentary. And so I feel bad for the folks, Christina's husband, David, who's one of my favorite people in the process. He's just like, man, I can't hear any more about Carlos Alcaraz. I just don't care. I know you're breaking big stories, but you've got to limit the tennis content to like 25 posts a day. You're just too big of a fan point. You should be on Substack. And I know this is so obvious right now. Substack is where basically the blogosphere has moved to. And it's kind of difficult to navigate because it isn't like, hey, we've got all these wares to sell. You've got to go to Bari Weiss's Substack and sign up for it. But once you get on there, the algorithms inside of Substack start referring you to other reporters and writers. Chris Cillizza, who used to be with the Washington Post and for a moment was like, kind of a Chuck Todd, one of the better political reporters. Then he got so Trump derangement syndrome that it was kind of hard to follow. He's had like a second life now. He got fired from, I think it was CNN, and has found a second life. There are a lot of those on Substack right now. A lot of, it's like the old blogs. It's just a column, but it is where news is being made, or being written about. You're gonna have to get in there and spend a few minutes finding it. But I'm also finding it's a great place for local journalism about your local communities. There are a lot of people, they don't have a huge follower base. They will have 5,000 people, but you will get more coverage about, like we have a guy who covers Citrus County. You will get coverage of your local governments on Substack better than you will from your newspapers right now. That's what's crazy about it. I think you should be reading The Atlantic, and I know that sounds obvious and pretentious because The Atlantic is Steve Jobs' sister, and it's funded and everything like that, but with the New York Times being New York Times is the #1 newspaper, paper of record. We had this moment where the Washington Post was gonna be the #2, and it has just fallen apart. It just has fallen apart. I hate to say it. Bezos can deliver, Bloody Mary mix to my house in 20 minutes, but he just can't run a newspaper, and it just goes to show you how difficult it is. The Atlantic has stepped up. The reporting in The Atlantic, I think, is probably the second best, most authoritative in the country. It is left-leaning, don't get me wrong, but it is, I think, the best there. You should be following Jim DeFede. Jim DeFede is of CBS News in Miami. We don't have many television news journalists in the political sphere. But Jim DeFede on Sunday mornings continues to break news. And he, especially now, this time during session, you will see Danny Perez sit down with him for a session preview, and news will come out of it. So, just put a clip on there for CBS News when DeFede's got his show. It is as good as we have for Meet the Press in this state. You should be following my nemesis, Mark Caputo. Damn it, this guy has got more lives than any cat I have ever met. He has made his way through more news organizations than I have bars in New Orleans. But he is so wired into the Trump White House right now. He is so wired into the Susie Wiles, James Blair, Marco Rubio White House that he may be the most important White House reporter right now. And so he's a Florida man. He had been in the wilderness for a little while, and he's back at Axios. You should be following him on Axios. You should be following the tributary. And I use this as an example. This is the Jacksonville tributary. It's headed up by Nate Monroe. Nate Monroe's he was, I think, the last really solid columnist / newspaper, reporter that we've had. Scott Maxwell is still doing his thing at the Orlando Sentinel. Nate Monroe would break news and have opinions, and he took his show to the tributary. He's doing a lot of good reporting there. It's one of these examples of if we could get a tributary in every city, we would have a lot better coverage of our local governments. They're covering stuff that nobody wants to cover, like prisoners dying in Jacksonville jails, and it's not all bleeding heart stuff. It's good, hard-hitting journalism honestly, this room, just go there and send them the $5 a month because it'll make, I mean, Jacksonville's our biggest city, right, by population. If everybody in this room would just subscribe for $5 a month and pay one reporter in that damn city, they would have so much great coverage. I know we could all do that. You should be curating your lists on social media. This is the most important advice I can get. I can't cover everything on social media, but if you were to look at my TweetDeck, and remember, the CIA has the equivalent of TweetDeck up on their big boards in all their offices. And if you go and you follow me, you will see that I have lists available, and they will be of Florida senators, Florida House members, Florida lobbyists, Tampa Bay Times reporters, etc. You can curate those lists. Instead of following 1,000 people and being a slave to the algorithm of X, create your own list and follow them. And that's how I'm able to skim through so much more, because I've got a list, Florida political reporters. So I know when Gary Fineout has a new story. I know when Matt Dixon has a new story. I have lists on, I bet you almost everybody in here is on some sort of one of my lists, one way or the other, whether it be government affairs people, Tampa politicians, etc. So curate your lists on social media. You should be reading the business journals, the 4 business journals in your area. Jacksonville, Orlando, I think there's one in South Florida, and then Tampa Bay. They are beating the local newspapers. Now, they are basically event putter-oners that also happen to have newspapers, but I know in Tampa Bay, the Business Journal is doing as good a job as the Tampa Bay Times is in covering it, covering the local business scene, et cetera. We've had a partnership with them in the past where they pick up our legislative coverage, just bolstering that. I know you all are C-suite people, or mostly are working for C-suite people, and you're probably there already, but I would double and triple down on your readership of the business journals. I say also you should mention Andrew Atterbury, education reporter, going back up to the Step Up for Students. All right, so that's my media part. I want to pivot now because I have a shtick I want to try out with you all. Today's speech, I've been working on it. I wanted to give new comments since our last time with the 3 senators and me. That was a barn burner. I wanted to give you a little something. Kind of like when a comedian dips into a dark New York comedy club and tries some stuff out and works it out. So we're going to work on this. I got this, and Michelle was like, what are you doing? So I was going to hold a skull and say, instead of to be or not to be, and then I was just like, no, I was going to hold a ramekin and say to souffle or not to souffle. And so I want to go through the politicians that have spoken before you. I'm glad that they're not here and that they've all left, or so most of them have left, and say who is a souffle and who is not a souffle, and talk about the legislative session. So let's just make sure Ootmeyer's picked up, he's out of valet, et cetera. This is the ChatGPT, just to remind you people, souffles collapse because of the air bubbles that inflate them during baking, and they're fragile, and the heat surface is delicate. The air contracts and protein structure loses its rigidity when the souffle cools or is removed from the oven's heat. Potential issues include improper egg white whipping, fat contamination, overfolding, incorrect temperature and timing, and excessive humidity, all of which can lead to the air escaping and the structure deflating. When I think of souffles, I of course think of Florida politicians, because they are fragile and they're delicate and they do collapse and sometimes they do rise. So what right now is the state of the souffles in Florida politics? And I want to start, I think I'm going to work this bottom up. I do want to say to Dominic, before putting the souffle metaphor aside, because I know he's leaving. I can't be here tonight for his going away party. I know, I'm sorry. I've got a Disney cruise to plan or something like that. The original Doge was Florida TaxWatch. Blaze is talking about FAFO. Dominic's been telling people, don't FAO or I'm going to make you FO for like 20-something years now. He's outlasted Don Gates in his stupid comment about how the turkeys don't matter. I will tell you, as the recipient of the press releases, They're putting out more good content right now. When we're talking about institutions and media, I do not understand why every single release from Florida TaxWatch is not assigned to a reporter and turned into a story. You just had healthcare for state employees. If you're the Tallahassee Democrat, how is that not the front page story of their newspaper? If I'm you, Dominic, I walk it down to Hatfield and Roscoe and I say, here is how many state employees are reading your newspaper. This is about them. Do we need 19 stories about how Florida State lost to Miami? 17 was good enough. Have one of the junior reporters just put this up there. And so as I see all of us dozing around right now, honestly, Florida TaxWatch was there first. I do want to talk about the property tax issue. I think this is a souffle that has too many ingredients and is going to collapse at the end. There are 31 members of the Florida House Committee on Tax Reform, right? There's the Senate. There's the governor. There's the opposing side. We haven't done enough analysis. We know that there is a hunger for property tax reform. That's undeniable. The polls show it. The polls show it that it would pass. But the budget or the line item on the ballot will not be, do you want your property taxes to go down? It will be something else. It will be 100 different words. There will be multiple versions. They will be misunderstood, misrepresented. They will be campaigned against and for. And at the end of the day, you will have too many ingredients in there. And when you have too many ingredients in a souffle, it will collapse. Now, I think you will get these souffles into the oven. I do think that they will have something come out of the legislative session that gets to the ballot. I think Ron DeSantis will keep them there until they get it. I'm hearing, and you know when I say I'm hearing, I take it for what it's worth, but it's usually right. I'm hearing that the Florida House is saying, hey, you know what? How did we jam up the governor the last time? He puts out an item and he expects us to come meet him. The House may be saying, hey, Ron DeSantis wants property tax reform. Why don't we pull him to the right and mix this whole thing up? And so it'll be interesting, I think, what product comes out of the House. At the same time, I don't know if you haven't noticed, if you've been in Tallahassee, I know the two people who haven't been there, and that's Ben Albritton and Ed Hooper and the rest of the Florida Senate. They haven't had the committee meetings, and we're at October. December's lost, we know that. That's holidays and blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, they've got 2.5 months to put together their own product, but we know that that's, they're going to take, this is the Senate. They think Thanksgiving is a 3-month holiday. I mean, they're not going, I just don't believe, and God forbid, any of these meetings conflict with Senator Hooper's wife Lee's cruise plans, because if they do, the whole thing is going to fall apart. I actually saw her at the UCF game. We were in the box. I hadn't seen Ed in a while. Ed's great. We go back, Pinellas, 30 years. He loves Michelle. And so the cruises, one of the things on the end of session last year, one of the big hiccups, the Senate is a little bit older in age, so there were some medical procedures that were scheduled for May, and they could not be moved back. And then Lee Hooper and Ed Hooper had a cruise. And she was all over social media just complaining about, damn it, they're going into a special session and I'm supposed to be in Barbados or whatever on the 14th. And so I see Lee, and she's just kind of watching the game, and I go into her, I'm like, hey, how was the cruise? And Ed looks at me like, you son of a bitch, you had to bring up the cruise within 5 minutes? Really? Come on. And so I'm telling you, if we run into that problem again, all bets are off. I love Ben Albritton. I love talking to Ben Albritton. I was the first person to call Ben Albritton after he was after he won the internal vote, and we got to publish that he was in line to become Senate president. And we've had a great conversations since then. Did anybody see Fantastic Four over the summer? Just raise your hands if you've seen the Fantastic Four movie. Okay, 6 people. Disney's got some problems. The Fantastic Four movie that came out this year, it's set on and this is a comic book reference, it's set, I think, on Earth 814, some alternate version of Earth. It looks like Earth, but this is like, it's kind of retro-futuristic. This looks like Earth if the Jetsons had come true in this movie. And so there's, eventually, the people of Earth 814 are going to meet up with our Earth, is what we kind of know in the comic book. But this is a really nice Earth. It's very positive. You know, you've got the Fantastic Four doing all the good stuff. That's where Ben Albritton is. He's on Earth 814 right now. He is in an alternate planet. He is not in the same world of the Florida House. Ben Albritton is a positive person. I don't mean that as a derogatory thing. But when I talk with Ben Albritton, he believes that all the shenanigans that happened last session, all the budget negotiations, all the bad blood, that somehow magically gets reset because there's a new session. If you've talked to the Florida House, they don't believe that. The Florida House is going to be serving up a tasting menu of Screw You. And the first course is going to be Screw You, and dessert is going to be Screw You. And it is going to be brutal. Now, this souffle has to get into the oven. We know that. This is going to be a souffle that explodes in the oven. This is going to be a worse session than last session. For example, so I'm never to besmirch the virtuous role of the Florida Senate, but the Florida Senate has a tendency to be where the lobby corps goes to park some of its special projects more often than not. Not that the House is immune from that, but the Senate likes to, some people say that the Florida Senate will tend to spend more. You know, but these are folks that have been around the process traditionally longer, so they've got a bigger entourage of lobbyists, et cetera. And that was part of the issue, was the Senate seemed to want to spend more, and the House, at least on paper, was trying to spend less or spend not as much in the increase. And this is an age-old battle. What has changed, I think, going into this session specifically, if you talk to Danny Perez, if you talk to Matt Ball, if you talk to Lawrence McClure, is like, hey, you know, we tried last year being fiscally responsible. We tried to hold the line. We tried to do the cut. Why should we get the bad press? Why should we be hated by the lobby corps? Why should we not have the special project in our district? And so where last time the fight was DeSantis, the Senate with DeSantis and the Senate's bigger budget and the House going like this, I think now you're going to have this race where it's back to both of them are going to be spending a lot of money. And so, and in different ways, with different priorities. And so I think you will also see, remember, this is obviously Ron DeSantis' last legislative session. If you just look historically, there is a tremendous amount of turnover in legislators. We've already seen that. If you are a legislator and you are not the president of a state college by now, something is the matter with you. Agency heads want to fatten their pensions. State representatives, you've served 8 years at $40,000. You know what a year and a half as becoming Deputy Secretary of Juvenile Justice does for your retirement pension or your retirement program? So you will see legislators quit, et cetera. You're seeing that already. You will see a tremendous amount of staff transition as people move to the next job. And so all of this, in addition to, now people are also, they're not scared of Ron DeSantis in the way that they were. They are going to try to get in whatever they can get in on this, in this session for the first time in something like 6 years. I think Ron DeSantis is a souffle with a very hard crust and really kind of, not undercooked, but there's a nice little chocolate inside to him that people are kind of forgetting here. Ron DeSantis has made it entirely, he's made it his, 6.5-year mission to expand the powers of the executive branch. He has said that he has gone in, reviewed the Constitution, and looked for places where he can expand the power of the executive branch. And that can be removing state attorneys, although that's in the Constitution, but the idea of removing a state attorney in Hillsborough or Orange County, expanding his powers, etc. I think it is such a misnomer, such a mistake to say that Ron DeSantis is a lame duck. I have no doubt in my mind that on 11:58 p.m. on January whatever, when the night before he goes in, he will be at his desk signing papers, appointing people, issuing executive orders, etc. And you know, the last time when DeSantis, if you all remember, when DeSantis was becoming governor, Rick Scott wouldn't turn over the keys to literally the offices. It was a really bad situation. That is going to look like the welcome wagon compared to the way Ron DeSantis goes out to the next guy or lady, whoever that may be. Speaking of which, I don't want to say this out loud, but has anybody else heard Casey DeSantis for Jacksonville Mayor 2027? I'm just hearing that they're kind of over it in Tallahassee, and maybe that's where they go. So just going to put that out there. Let me see who else on my, all right, so going through Blaze, back to where we started 20 minutes ago. Susie Wiles hates Blaze. There's just no other way to put it. She just hates Blaze. She can't forgive him for Blaze when Ron DeSantis was at the top of the heap, going around and getting legislative endorsements for Ron DeSantis. I don't think, if Blaze Ignolia loses, and I love Blaze, simply because he's not as good of a poker player. The secret is he's not as good of a poker player as he thinks he is, and if you get him at a table, you can make some money. He will not be outworked. There's no doubt about that. He is going to be at every Lake County Federated Women's Republican Club for the next year and a half. But if Susie Wiles and company decide that they do not want Blaze in there, I think he's got a different thing. I don't know that Kevin Steele is the answer. And I've publicly said this, and like, you know, I think that the book on Kevin Steele, and I think this is making its way up to the White House now, because Blaze does have some friends in that White House, is that some people think Kevin Steele is a little too far right in the wrong way. And there is a chicken and egg situation. The White House wants to see him put in $10 million of him. He's somehow got a $200 million, $300 million net worth. They want to see $10, $15 million in the bank before he gets in. He is telling people he's not selling any of the real estate until he gets the Trump endorsement. So it is going to be who is going to blink first there. And I will not believe Kevin Steele is running until I see some real estate signs in front of his property. That doesn't mean that he's not doing it. I don't play at that level. But until I see the money in the bank there, I still think it's Blaze's race to lose. James Ootmeyer is a souffle with all the right ingredients. Anybody notice how much sharper he was dressed today? A little bit sharper? Somebody said that to me, a friend of mine that was here earlier. James is getting more photogenic, getting better in front of the camera. Remember, he was a staffer. He's not a politician. He's in politics now, but he hasn't campaigned door to door. He's learning on the ropes. He's putting out a lot of content. I think it is a super smart track to go down, kind of the child predatory role of attacking that as an attorney general, going after, like, he's going after Snapchat pretty hard right now. He's running a Grady Judd kind of playbook, if you think about it. I don't know that Danny Perez wants to be attorney general. I think that was like one of those things. I remember I rushed a fraternity house in the fall of 1994, and I took the first invitation that was given to me, and it took me about 2 weeks to figure out that it wasn't the right fraternity for me, and so I dropped out and I ended up joining another fraternity. Sometimes you're in the room with a bunch of guys, and they're like, hey, don't you want to join Tau Kappa Epsilon? Or don't you want to join Make America Great? And you're like, yeah, let's go do it. And you're surrounding the presidents there. But then you're like, do I really want to run for attorney general? Have I done this before? And I don't know. I'm not, again, on these two undercard slots, I'm just not convinced yet. I need one more MAGA lightning bolt from the Trump White House to really get there on those two. Governor's race, obviously. Let's go to that one. Well, actually, let's take a step, one more. Wilton Simpson has not told his staff or anyone else around him that he's running for re-election yet. Now, that does not mean that he's not running for ag commissioner. But Wilton Simpson will say, Kathy Mears will say, that he has not said that he is running for re-election. The whole term that you keep hearing is up or out. He either is going to run, he's going to go up and run for governor, or he's going to go back home to Trilby. Now, I think that's a mistake because I think the one thing that, I mean, we've turned the agriculture department into basically, it is the government. I mean, that is an empire that I would like to be in charge of. I mean, they've got helicopters and a new building and a police force, and it's super, I mean, it's always been a super important industry in Florida anyways. I mean, it's just so in Wilton's wheelhouse. It's a great, I don't know why he would want to leave that other than maybe he's done it. I do feel a little bit of like aggrievement from that world that Wilton was kind of maybe stepped over for Byron. You know, he was close with Susie. There just seems a little bit. I've heard some stuff on the trail, et cetera. You know, Wilton's a team player. Wilton's out there, et cetera. But, and then it didn't help things when Ben Albritton at the local Charlotte County delegation meeting started telling people, I'm not coming back next year. This is my last meeting. Now, nobody was watching that except me because who else? I mean, why wouldn't you watch Florida Channel at 2:30 in the afternoon on a Wednesday? And I'm like, wait, he just said he's not coming back. And Ben Albritton has been telling everybody he wants to run for ag commissioner. And I got to tell you, old Wilton ain't too happy that, you know, Ben Albritton's been telling people that. And honestly, Jay Collins, there was something about him because he sponsored the Farm Bill. So again, I don't think that's a settled issue yet. I want to hear, I have a rule, and the best politician in here is Jeff Kottkamp, but I have a rule that if a candidate announces in January, they're announcing that they're not running. Because I think you want to get set either like a year out or you want to go in May. January just seems like the wrong time. I feel like you're still stuck in the holidays inertia. Well, actually, the best politician here is Governor Bob Martinez. I'm sorry, my apologies, sir. It isn't easy being a Republican and winning in Tampa, let me tell you. So I do think that, I don't know, maybe 10% chance that that race gets into play. Governor's race. All right, so I did write a piece, you know, where is Jay Collins' campaign? He was supposed to announce. He was telling people, this isn't him, this is not media speculation. He was telling, probably some of you in this room, that he was announcing October 1st and he was going to have the endorsement of Governor DeSantis when he came out of the gate. Now, we're past October 1st. We're a week past October 1st, and he's not out of the gate. And if you look at his campaign finance, now he's been able to raise money this whole time. He's raising less money now than when he was running for the state Senate. I think he's got all the ingredients, but he never gets put into the oven. And if he does get put into the oven, I think it's a bad story for him. He gets out, let's say he does jump out a year out, November 4th or whatever. He's not going to raise any money. We know who the top lobbyists and donors are in this state, and they are all telling the governor the same thing. Hey, we love you, Governor. We've donated to you. We've campaigned for you in Iowa. We will donate to you again to set you up in 2028. But we don't know Jay Collins. He was a state senator that you put in, basically, that you put in. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong about his great biography. Jay Collins is so much more of a man than I am. I couldn't have served. Couldn't have done anything. But that's not my job. My job is to, number one, pick who's going to be the winner on Thursday Night Football, and then two, call who's going to be the governor or who's going to run for governor. And I just don't see him. I will make the prediction that is, I do not see him on the ballot in November or even beforehand, September of 2026. I think that if he gets out, he will collapse. I think part of the reason why Ron DeSantis doesn't want to put Casey in that LG spot is, what if Collins gets out there with Casey on there and Collins collapses? And now Casey is LG to a bad souffle. You're not going to want to do that. I think Byron Donalds is an undervalued souffle. I don't remember a candidate raising money at this clip. I don't remember a candidate in a primary. I think the last real, 94, that five-way primary with Smith, Jeb, Gallagher, et cetera, that's what this could turn into. Those guys were all basically even with each other. You need me to, okay. Oh, geez, I'm sorry. Wow, I've been talking forever. I told you I was trying. So I think Byron Donalds is an undervalued souffle. I think people should get on board with that sooner or later. And no, I do not, now that I see the Gong Show coming, I know that I don't think Casey DeSantis gets out there either. I think that they are going to protect her for future endeavors. Any quick questions before I get this one? Yes.
I just wanted to thank you. I was reading, I think it was somewhere in the Court of Politics, and you did mention, and I've known Ron Book for 40 years, that he was a candidate for the Nobel Peace Prize. And I'm just going to say, even though I know, I've known him for 40 years, I learned the first thing.
Ron Book is the luckiest man. Alive this week because he got to do a Hallmark movie with Lacey Chabert. Lacey Chabert is she's the star of the Hallmark movie. She's my favorite. She was on Party of Five. I call her Lace Face. She's so gorgeous. She just blinks the entire time. I'm so jealous of him right now. So thank you for that question. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I overspoke and wasn't able to get your questions.
Peter, before you go, I have one question.
Oh, please.
Paul Renner, souffle.
Paul Renner is a souffle made out of communion wafers. He is on a mission for God, and that's not to be made fun of. He is on a mission for God. He believes that. That's why he switched over to Brett Doster, who is known for working with Christian conservative candidates. Paul Renner raised $750,000 last month, which is enough to keep the lights on through the holidays as a candidate. Let's say something does happen to Byron Donalds. We saw in Virginia right now, this guy, the bad AG candidate, you can fall apart. We saw in North Carolina, front runner, the guy that lost to Josh Stein, fell apart. There's always somebody that falls apart. I don't think that that's going to be Byron Donalds, but maybe Paul Renner staying in there. And the Paul Renner story about UF board, all of that, and the interconnectedness of that, that's for another speech, and it should be written more about because it really is Florida politics at its heartbeat. But if you like souffles that taste like communion wafers, he'll be baking one up for you.
Peter, what does DeSantis do the next 4 years?
Number one decision DeSantis has to make is, does he back Byron Donalds? This all goes away. He saves his guys. He saves Ootmeyer. He saves Blaze. He saves all of his appointments if he somehow endorses Byron. That's not out of the question yet. If he can swallow his pride and do that. And then if he does that, I do think he sets himself up for UF presidency. I think that is going to be the thing at the end. I think that he goes to UF president. I sympathize with them. They don't own a home. He's the poorest Yale Harvard grad I've ever met. He's got to get out there. And this was the same issue that Jeb faced. And Jeb said, I got to go make some money. Remember that? And that threw his whole timing off. I think Ron's got to go out there and make some money just to take care of 3 kids that are going to go to college one day.